Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary.
The year is 3013. The galaxy is scintillating in the mellow light. Two galactic pilgrims seek out vistas in the samurai future to bring forth the unity of the cosmic shaman. Opening the door of the pantheon of mystics, the evil sorcerer wizard powers the engine of science, seeking to forever alter the sacred balance, travelling on effervescent balls of summer fire.
This week, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country.
In the year 1991, Mr. Gorbachev tore down that wall.
Yeah. Oh, right. All the metaphors and things. Man, yeah.
Wow, it really is 6 a.m., Matt.
It really is 6 a.m. No, I just woke up and I'm like, why am I up now? Oh, yeah, there's a reason for that. Okay. But yes, Cold War metaphors and all that with today's movie, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. This is Matt.
This is Luke. Welcome to our...
I'm waiting for you. I'm going to let you finish it.
Sci-Fi... Why would you do that? Sci-Fi Sanctuary.
Did you almost say Sci-Fi Sanctuary?
I was just so annoyed at you. Normally you're the one who wants to toss it back every other word. Now you're making me finish the whole sentence.
Yeah. That's I'm claiming my 6 a.m. rights here. And of course you can claim yours, so and it's all moot in the end.
That's alright, I've got my 2 cans of G-Zone.
No, I forgot to even get a water here. I'm just like, oh, what's going on? Okay.
Yeah. Well, as it's Star Trek, and this is our 6th Star Trek, we always like to bring in a guest for the Star Trek films. And this time we've got, from one of my favourite podcasts, a computer game show, and probably more relevant to listeners of this podcast, Star Ghouls, the other half of the coin, it's James Farley.
Hello. Yeah, it's me.
So go ahead. The first side of the coin being his co-host.
Yeah, we had Dave on for Back to the Future a while back. But me and Matt have spoken at length about our history of Star Trek, so I figured makes sense to give the floor to you, James. How did you get into the trekking?
Yeah, I mean, you see, I'd probably say that Star Trek is probably my favourite thing, like in terms of like media, that I think I've sort of experienced in my life, and it's had like I'd say it's had a pretty big impact actually on my life, like over the years. And it probably began, I think, in the late 80s when I used to catch like the odd episode on the original series and everything before Next Generation was on like BBC Two and stuff like that. And I remember my dad used to like occasionally record stuff, like off TV for me, to watch later. And he recorded it was actually Star Trek 2, the Wrath of Khan, off the TV. And that was the first film that I saw, and I mean I was blown away by it. How was I? I was about sort of 9 or 10 years old, and it was incredible. It completely sucked me in to the entire universe, really. And from that point on, really, I just became more and more obsessed and more interested in the whole thing. Two is probably still one of my favourites, but 6, the one we're going to talk about, is, I watched it again just over the last couple of days, and I still think it's one of my favourite films ever. I think it's fantastic. I mean, it doesn't hit the same sort of notes as the Wrath of Khan does, but it's still, for me, it's a very sort of emotionally affecting film. I find I always feel very sad at the end of that film, especially because I think the score is particularly fantastic. But I think really it was the films to begin with that got me into it, and then obviously the Next Generation, and then I think it was Deep Space Nine really was the one, probably I would say more recently, but it's really 20 years ago, that was the thing that I really became very, very obsessed with. And I've rewatched it many, many times because I think it's really quite incredible. Because I've always been I'm always sort of more attached to the sort of the political side of Star Trek, and and that's really, I think, why I really like 6 as well, because that's obviously that's one of the main sort of themes of the film. But yeah, I'm excited about this film. I love it a lot.
6 is nice for sort of sticking its landing, I think. We actually like 5 around the Sci-Fi Sanctuary for some reason. But yeah, I mean, people have basically been waiting years and years for like just a rousing, Star Trek adventure of some kind, Captain Kirk on the bridge of the Enterprise with a full crew, which you had not really gotten in the movies, which is interesting. 5 you were supposed to, but it was just, had committed the sin of being totally weird and clunky in what we consider a fun way, but we get it.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's it's strange with 5 because I don't hate 5 at all. Maybe it's because of when I was growing up and when I saw it, I didn't have the same sort of critical faculties that I've maybe got as I've got older. But I've still got a huge fondness for that film because I think Shatner was trying something with that, and obviously it didn't maybe completely work, but it's still, I think, an interesting film. I still feel, I mean, this is probably a terrible thing to say, but I still think it's better than any of the more recent films, as in like the what's called the
Kelvin
films.
ones, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I still would. I'd much rather watch that than any of those films.
I
But
might
maybe it's just
put Beyond above that, but
yeah, Beyond was quite good. That wasn't so bad. That was probably the best, I think, of the 3. But the other 2, I mean, the second one. Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder if people secretly like 5. I just find the more that I mention it, I'm like, I always try coding it with like a little disclaimer, but no, I like 5.
yeah.
I think in 2020 we all like 5.
I don't think anyone
please.
who's brought it up with has said they don't like it yet.
That's what I'm getting at. If comment us over here if you're like, 5 is still the terrible blunder of the century or last century or whatever. As for 6, the first time I saw it was in this like small regional mall where we'd see some movies. Not quite the multiplex. It was one of those 2-screen deals. The main fun thing is it was opening night. We liked it, but that mall has since been completely recast as like a Mexican mall, and you go in there and it's Atlanta, Georgia, but I haven't been to Mexico City, but I imagine it feels like Mexico City inside, so you can get real tacos and stuff. It's great. I don't think you could see Star Trek 6 there anymore, though.
That's a shame. They should bring it back.
I don't think I saw this one properly until quite late. Like, when I was in my teens and buying up all the Star Trek DVDs myself. But when I sat down and watched it, I really remembered the CG Klingon blood at the start. So I must have seen it once as a kid, but I didn't remember it at all until I rewatched it in my teens. But this one is, like, by far the most Star Trek of the Star Trek films. Perhaps.
How do you mean?
Well, I think partly it is just because you've got the whole crew on the Enterprise, Enterprise in, Star Trek in.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think it's the only one that feels like it moves the overall plot of Star Trek forwards.
Mm-hmm.
In each of the other films, there's like a one-off crisis, they solve it, you kind of reset back to the status quo. But this one, like, is big movements in the relationship between the Federation and the Klingons. It's like, finally, the crew are, like, retiring and settling down. It really feels like this one is the sequel to the original series.
Mm-hmm. I think, certainly in terms of like trying to deal with sort of contemporary issues as well. I mean, 4 does that obviously because they try and do the sort of the environmental kind of aspect. But 6, I would agree. I think it's certainly the one which is maybe most true to the spirit of the original series, even though apparently Roddenberry hated it. When he saw the draft just before he died, he really, really disliked it. But Roddenberry
really?
was not always great. He's apparently
The only thing I saw about Roddenberry was an interview with Leonard Nimoy, and he told it that Roddenberry didn't hate it, but at the end he was like, "Oh, but you never really explained why the Klingons have been so angry all this time." But yeah, the more I learn about Roddenberry, I think he's not really the reason Star Trek is so great.
I know. Well, it's kind of a George Lucas situation, I think, to a degree. With some of that, it's like creating an amazing sort of universe, an amazing, world, but not yeah, maybe the detail is not always so great, and some of the ideas. I mean, the utopian ideals I think are interesting as part of Star Trek, and I think it's a core part of it. But you do need the tension there, and that's what can sometimes make things more interesting. Which is certainly what we got with Star Trek 6, and I think using sort of the real world contemporary things. But I mean, I read just most recently when I was just after I rewatched it about how. The writers had sort of shown him the script, because he died before the film came out, like just before the film came out, and they'd had quite a lot of arguments over it because he really wasn't happy with the direction they'd gone, because he really didn't like the sort of the military tone to the whole thing, like the sort of the naval sort of military tone, and because he felt it was too sort of combative, which is, and that's one of the things that I've always most enjoyed about this style of Star Trek film, and one of the reasons why I really strongly dislike the more like Star Trek Discovery and all those these more recent films. The other films and the original series and Next Generation as well, and also Deep Space Nine, had that very sort of strong sort of naval feel to them as well. For how combat was undertaken, and how the ships were run, and it felt very grounded and very sort of real, to a degree. And that's what I feel has been lost from Star Trek over the last since they've rebooted it recently, which is a shame.
Oh yeah, they used to be submarine movies, but now they try and be dogfighting movies, which isn't quite the same.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I love Star Wars. I did Star Calls, from that. I really like it, but one of the reasons I like Star Trek is because it is different to that. It is like you said, it's submarine films, and I find that much more interesting. These slow, big slow moving ships. It's like tactics, not just loads of explosions all over the place. That kind of thing. It's it's much more engaging.
And I think a lot of that does come from the director Nick Meyer, because The Wrath of Khan is the one where they really started pushing that Horatio Hornblower sort of angle. Of course, he's back in 4 he had a hand in the script writing, and here he's back in the director's chair as well. So there is a lot of Khan DNA simply from having the same director, even if the story and the pacing is quite different here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because I heard the other thing that I sort of always heard about this was that he was sort of persuaded to direct because there was the issue about if it was going to be Leonard Nimoy, that would cause a problem for William Shatner, because he wasn't very happy about the idea that Nimoy would direct another film, and he'd only got one stab at it, and which had obviously gone how it did. So that was the good compromise, I guess. But I think, Nicholas Meyer was brilliant. It's just such. Also the other thing that I found interesting when I rewatched it the other day is just it's a very tight film. It's only like an hour and 50 minutes long, and it's just sort of scene. It's there's no sort of filler or anything like that. Although obviously the director's cut has quite a lot of extra material that was sort of excised from it, which also gives more context as well. The stuff at the end with the Klingon who attempts the assassination, and in the director's cut of that, you find that it's not a Klingon; it's actually a human with prosthetics on and things like that, which they just removed, which completely changes quite a lot of the plot. But it was sort of removed. It's strange. Yeah, very strange.
We said the same thing about Khan, that it's just there's absolutely no fat on that movie. Every scene serves the plot, moves it forwards. So yeah, Mayer's just obviously very good at getting out a tight film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really good. It's
I guess I'll take a moment to crank out that story then.
Make it so.
By along by on a nice lake, smoky bee shoots on through the dark gate. Farewell, the ordeal, I'm playing hands with fate. And he said, I'm bound to wheel.
Captain Hikaru Sulu, commanding the Excelsior, experiences a massive compression wave near Klingon space while on patrol. It turns out that Praxis, the Klingons' power station moon, has exploded and their empire only has 50 years left. Captain Spock uses this opportunity for the Federation to make peace with the Klingons and signs up Captain Kirk and the Enterprise to take that first step. Kirk is not particularly happy about this, as Klingons are responsible for the death of his son. Regardless, the Enterprise sets out to meet the Klingon Chancellor in neutral space. They all have an awkward, drunken party together to smooth things over before everyone just goes to bed. Things get real, though, when the Enterprise seemingly launches a photon torpedo at the Klingon ship, crippling them, while two guys in Federation spacesuits beam aboard to assassinate the Klingon Chancellor. Kirk and Dr. McCoy beam over in a show of good faith to try and save the Chancellor's life. This does not work out, however, and Kirk and McCoy are scuttled away to a Klingon tribunal and then to the icy prison planet of Ruapenthe. The Enterprise is ordered to return home, but Spock has the crew help them stall as they must find the assailants before reaching space dock, so they can exonerate Kirk and McCoy. It also turns out that the photon torpedo originated from a Klingon ship that can fire while still cloaked, commanded by the intimidating General Chang. Conspiracy is afoot, and Spock goes as far as to mind rape his former Vulcan protege Valeris to seek out answers. The Enterprise manages to retrieve Kirk and McCoy and warps its way towards Khitomer, the location of the Klingon Federation Peace Conference, where the new Klingon Chancellor will also be assassinated, destroying all chance of peace. General Chang's cloaked ship stands in their way, but the Enterprise runs that particular gauntlet with the help of Sulu's Excelsior and Trek's predilections to tech the tech. The assassination is averted, conspirators are revealed, and the whole senior Enterprise crew gets a polite golf clap from the peace conference crowd.
That felt like that was literally just put in there for Shatner's ego. Well done.
Okay.
Good job. Yep, you're still the best. Bye-bye. Retire.
Yeah, it's like,
please.
It's like the way with the credits. Like that, like he's the last person to do the signature on the credits, and like they do like the Star Trek theme, for him, and it's just
I'd forgotten they
that.
do the signatures thing. So when I was watching Endgame last year, I didn't realise they were ripping this off.
Yeah, did I do that in that as well? Because I've not. You see, that I'm actually. My wife and I have been doing like a Avengers sort of marathon. Like we've watched because when the series sort of began, we were living in China at the time, and we kind of missed like most of it, and then just didn't bother when we got back. So like over the last 6 months or so, we've just been watching one a week kind of thing, and we just got to Endgame, and we don't know what's going to happen. So
nice.
We've managed to avoid spoilers the entire time, but
that's impressive.
But yeah, looking forward to that. But yeah,
that's about like avoiding Star Wars spoilers at this point, or original trilogy spoilers, right? Yeah.
Don't listen to our podcast then, because for the first 6 months we were constantly bringing up Endgame.
We didn't spoil it too much, though. We just I think we were talking more about the aesthetics most of the time,
Yeah.
For this one, we can talk about the main actors, but shall we go around the edges first? The main one, of course, Christopher Plummer is fantastic here.
He's very entertaining, but I didn't really feel like the conflict with him like I did with some of the previous villains.
Maybe that's what Roddenberry didn't like.
it might be that. I mean, it's also. I mean, I think he was having a very good time. I think with with the part, even though apparently he refused it the first time, and then they had to sort of persuade him to do it. But he seems to be sort of enjoying himself. But I mean, I'd agree that he's playing a sort of. I wouldn't say it's like a sort of a cardboard sort of villain sort of character, but it's. Yeah, quoting all the lines and the quotes that he uses all the time. There doesn't feel like there's a massive sort of personal enmity between him and Kirk. It's more sort of they're sort of like sort of digging each other out rather than sort of true sort of warrior enemies with each other. I
think that's deliberate, right? Because he says explicitly like he respects Kirk and he wants to keep the war going. So if they fully hated each other and you were like, yeah, get him, Kirk. It wouldn't quite have the same impact as here, where it's like, actually, we don't want a war. So it would be better if Kirk didn't have to kill him, but unfortunately he does.
Well, he's kind of the on a different plane, you and I would be friends sort of villain. Although he's too busy quoting to actually say anything like that. I should mention there's so much Plummer going on. He's not particularly Klingon, with all the quoting. It's just fun to watch him, I guess.
Well, yeah, but Shakespeare's best in the original Klingon.
Yeah, true. Which he gives in English. What a hypocrite.
But it's funny because most of the Klingons in this don't feel very much like Klingons from other films or other series. Really, it feels to me like they sort of, I wouldn't say they humanized them, but they did try and sort of show them to be, not the same, but obviously not just sort of villainous characters. That they actually have their own stake here. They are, they have a right to survive as well. It was, yeah.
Well, and of course, this whole film is a huge stepping stone between, like, TOS and TNG. So they had to show the Klingons developing somewhat. Even down to the fact that they wear the TNG, like, outfits and stuff now.
We'd already had Worf on the bridge for 4 years when this came out, which could be a bit of a disconnect if you're just going through all the previous to this, going through all the TOS stuff and then jumping ahead. It's like, well, something happened, but yeah, obviously in this case, it's probably worth showing what happened, which they did.
The one thing I will say about General Chang's character is, it makes it even more ridiculous that they made. I can never remember his real name. They made Dr. Brown wear brownface when they just let Chris Plummer be his own natural skin tone.
Well, his request, one of the things where they convinced him to do the role was basically, we'll do like minimal makeup prosthetics on you, because he wasn't down with that.
Is that so? I didn't know that. That's...
Yeah, if you look at his ridge is much smaller. Same with the I guess it's the female chancellor.
The daughter.
Her Klingon makeup's very toned down. And I think David Warner, who plays the assassin chancellor, they gave him just a little bit of an Abe Lincoln look on purpose with that beard.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that.
But they were visually trying to make the Klingons like a little less alien. This one, very different than Discovery, where they try and make them look a lot more alien.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get a lot of variety with them here.
Yeah, I'm absolutely not a fan of the Discovery Klingons at all.
Yeah, the lack of hair got me. So, and the first season where they just have we did rewatch some of Discovery, and I think the subtitles were off. And no, they're in Japanese because my family were watching it. And just those Klingon scenes with no subtitles, because they go on for like 5 minutes and they're all talking slowly. Ooh, so we don't get that here. That's nice. The Klingon just goes in straight up English.
The other thing I didn't like with Discovery is they all had the fake teeth, so they had to do that "I am wearing a costume" voice all the time.
Oh, yeah, that's I guess why those 5-minute slogs got me. And I should come out and say I don't hate Discovery. I like Discovery fine, but that was not my favorite. That was not my favorite part.
I do miss, the older Star Treks, even though I don't hate Discovery.
I would say have a look at Lower Decks. It has kind of a TNG vibe. I mean, a stupid TNG vibe, but that's intentional, right?
Yeah, I've actually quite enjoyed Lower Decks. It's the humour doesn't always land, I don't think, but yeah, it does. It feels more, to me like something like TNG. It certainly feels more like that, but
it's got a beating Trek heart, which of course this movie has as well. But any other periphery? Not periphery. Calling David Warner and Christopher Plummer periphery is weird, but yeah, go ahead.
We have David Bowie's wife in here.
Yeah, I didn't say her name because I don't know how to pronounce the I.
I'm going to say Iman, but I don't know if that's correct.
Okay, I'm not either. That's one of those names I've seen in print quite a bit, but yeah. She's pretty. I mean, she's kind of cardboard, right? But she has a striking look. Well, one for being a very attractive lady, and then with the feathers added to it and all that. So
and the yellow eyes as well.
Oh yes, of course. Well, yeah. I don't know with eyes. You're just like, well, he probably married someone with the color eyes. But yes, of course, contacts. Bowie didn't need contacts to have weird looking eyes.
I was gonna say her scenes get us into the most like Star Trek 5-ish territory, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd say, the whole escape from Repente, I think, is one of the probably the weaker part of the film. I'd say it's not I mean, it doesn't work in some ways. I mean, like logically, some of the stuff doesn't work. I mean, the whole idea about Kirk being tracked and stuff like that. He's wearing the same clothes. It's logically it doesn't seem to work so well.
That patch was really big too, by the way. I don't know if
Yeah, so obvious.
It's like, and also, how did he not notice that he put it on his back? I mean, if somebody stuck that on me, it's like almost wearing like a note saying like "kick me" or something.
It looked like a black caterpillar or something.
Yeah, it's like it was pretty obvious. But then, I mean, also the scenes in the prison. I mean, I'm not sure that they entirely worked. And the idea that McCoy and Shatner, not Shatner, Kirk even, would be able to like survive somewhere like that is a bit. At that age, almost certainly they would have been assassinated immediately. But obviously, it can't work out like that. But also, I'd say, the escape. I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of that. As I said, I think it's the weak.
I think this is a scene where you're perfectly valid in calling him Shatner, not Kirk.
Yeah,
yeah. That scene Shatner gets to have with himself, very stupid. It's fun to watch just as he completely Shatner's all of his intonations, but obviously he couldn't act with himself, like do the split screen thing very effective. Well, he did it before, I guess, in the original show, but that was also hammy. So
They don't even look directly at each other. They're both looking at the camera in these scenes.
Which is the one when I can't remember episode titles, but yeah, the one where we get the kind of Logie Kirk and the super aggressive Kirk.
Oh, there's like a transporter accident one, right?
Yeah,
I can't remember the name of it.
Is that that's not The Enemy Within, or is it?
It might be, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was sitting here like kind of half looking at my notes and realizing that I was looking at Star Trek 4 notes the whole time. It's like, why does none of this make sense?
There's no whales in this film. It's like...
Yeah. I just wanted to mention the Nutney alien for some reason.
Oh, the alien.
Knee nuts.
Yeah.
Being very Star Trek 5, right? So.
Yeah. Well, that's my favourite joke from Men in Black 2. Is basically that, where he's fighting an alien and he's like, he's a bull-chinian! And then he punches him in the chin because that's where his balls are.
Oh, I said that would be the dumbest alien in Trek if not for the Packlets. Do you guys remember them?
What's wrong with the Packlets? Come on.
Our ship, it don't work. And then they're like just like torturing Geordi in the most ridiculous way possible. Yeah.
Yeah, but they were underestimated though. They still did. They did pretty well. Considering what was
That one I do remember at Samaritan Snare. That's someone I would like to see make a Trek reappearance sometime, just for the absurdity of it. Come on, touch that one, someone.
Yeah, I want to see them try that in 2020.
Oh, heartthrob Christian Slater showing up. I didn't know that actually his mom was the casting director. I don't think it was that he was necessarily a giant Trek fan, like Whoopi Goldberg showing up, but that maybe he was. But yeah, mom was just like, oh, my son's famous. Let's stick him in for a second to bring the kids in.
Yeah, it really is like a blink and you'll miss it role, isn't it?
That's on the Excelsior, yeah?
Yeah.
Isn't it where he sort of tells, he tries to say that, we need to tell them where the Enterprise is. And he's like, you got the hearing problem bit.
Yeah, I was expecting him to at least show up on the bridge again after that or something, but it's just that little cameo, I think. Well, we get into Sulu. So I'm guessing that at this point in their careers there was some big old beef between Takei and Shatner, because they're never even on the same set, right?
Right, that was how Sulu got his ship, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I mean, logistically, it doesn't make sense. They are on the same set in the end, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, they do both land at the end.
They don't have to talk to each other, though, so you may have a point there.
I mean, I love that Sulu now gets to have his own ship and be a captain and stuff, and that he seems to be the only one who isn't just, reminiscing about past glories and hanging out on the Enterprise. But, yeah, you can tell that there's something going on there.
Of course, in the meeting, of course, Kirk didn't even ask where's Sulu. The boardroom meeting at the beginning. Because he's like, everyone's here. He didn't ask where's Sulu.
I mean, George Takei was really into the idea of being the captain of the Excelsior as well. Because, I mean, you know, there was the whole campaign that he tried to do to try and get his own series, you know, with this. You know, he sort of, you know, tried to get fans to petition Paramount and everything to do like a Captain Sulu series, you know, like with him and the Excelsior. He was very into that idea, but yeah, obviously it didn't turn out.
Well, even as far back
Maybe
as Star Trek
was
4, there's the little line where he's like, "Ooh, I'm hoping for the Excelsior."
Everything works out for Sulu. Maybe Takei not so much, although he seems to be doing pretty groovy these days, so whatever.
Yeah, he's like the internet's grandpa now. He's happy.
I guess with the characters, in that escape we mentioned that we definitely get Shatner, but who is in that boardroom in the beginning? That angry old man who's pissed at the Klingons. Are we looking at Shatner or Kirk there?
That's like some of the most characterization Kirk's had since the original series, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I guess that's where I was like reading in. Are we getting a little more Shatner here? He's emoting harder, maybe because this is the last time around the track. I don't know.
But I think it particularly works as like it makes him very distinct from TNG and Picard. We've often talked about how really, if you watch the actual shows, Kirk and Picard are not that different. But here in the movies, Kirk is old and like out of time. And it's kind of saying, like, it is time to let this crew go, and that, you know, the new crew of the future.
But then also still having that sort of, like, wanting to let go, but then also wanting to make sure that the future there's going to be is the one that you'd want it to be, you know, and that's where you get the conflict over, you know, what to do with the Klingons, you know, because they can't leave that to everyone else. It's like that's still got to be resolved.
I was going to say, ultimately, although they foil the assassination and everything, he does leave the future to, you know, younger people, the Chancellor and everyone. But he has to learn to do that.
Yeah, because they all just fly into his sun in the end.
And I like the idea of that ending where they do just fly into a star and burn up, and that's it.
That's how I watched it this time around. That's what I assumed happened.
Yeah, that star was the second star to the right, and yeah.
But one person that doesn't get a character arc here is Spock, really, because we've talked about how we keep reloading Spock, and you know, of course, 2, 3, 4. It's once again Spock learning again, but here it's basically a balanced Spock, which is we haven't really gotten since the original series.
Well, in 2 he's pretty much balanced Spock, right? So this is that one again.
Well, then he gets killed, though, right?
Yeah, I guess he has to live at the end here.
Oh, sorry, spoiler alert if you're listening to Star Trek 6 podcast.
I mean, some of the stuff that Spock does in this film is, I mean, that scene on the bridge with
Valaris, I think.
Got her name.
Valaris.
Is it Valaris?
Yeah, that's always been a relatively hard to watch scene, because he basically is like straight up mind raping her.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you're watching this, and you're thinking, this is awful. Like, actually, what's going on here? I mean, he's you know, massively invading, you know, somebody.
Oh, and here's the thing that really got me this time, because I guess I just never noticed for it. He fails to get the information from Valaris, and then they just like call up Sulu, and Sulu's like, oh yeah, it's over there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he gets the names of the conspirators from her.
Oh right, but he doesn't get the location, and then after the call, just calls up Sulu. Oh yeah, it's over at Kittimer. No problem.
When you're watching one of the newer things, you know, one of the Kelvin films or Discovery, people really kick off about the mind meld being misused. But here's Spock misusing it in, like, one of the most beloved films.
The rest of the bridge crew... The rest of the bridge crew, I guess, really got more to do in 4. We just talked to 4, and, you know, they have quite a bit to do there. Here, they get a few nice lines and things, but...
Yeah, they're back to their role from the TV show here. They just follow orders, and that's about it.
Yeah, I guess they just don't have much to do on the ship. I don't know. To get them off the ship, they have more to do.
Well, yeah, you know, Uhura gets to man the phones, Chekhov gets to use the steering wheel, and Scotty does the engine, but that's really it. They're just actually doing their jobs in this one. Even McCoy really doesn't have a big role in this one. So yeah, among the main crew, it's really just Kirk and Spock who get to do anything in this one. Even McCoy, he's along for the ride, but he doesn't make any big decisions or play a huge role other than trying to save the Chancellor.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's fun in the passenger seat. He certainly gets wonderful lines, but he's just he's in the passenger
Although I guess
seat.
that's all McCoy's ever done. He's just there to stand next to Kirk and moan.
Well, he got in the original show, he got his occasional episode like that one with the weird asteroid inner planet thing.
Yeah, the salts. That was with that salt monster as well.
Oh,
wasn't that?
that was
the episode.
Yeah, that was the first aired episode. Yeah, I think we just passed the anniversary of that when they had Star Trek Day for it.
And that's the original. Like, I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer, right?
Yeah, exactly. I get. Is it the bricklayer?
No, I think that's a later monster.
My favorite moment in this movie is
Yeah.
my favorite McCoy. My favorite moment of this film is a McCoy moment.
Well, one's that.
Okay, I was wondering if anyone would guess, but when he tries to tell a joke at the Klingon trial and like one person laughs, and then he has this beaming smile on his face.
Yep.
He got the joke.
He looks real old in that scene.
But he looks so happy.
Yeah.
So anyway, I enjoyed that quite well.
I guess the other actor/character to talk about is Valaris. The crazy thing is, I remembered this as being Savick.
Who it was supposed to be. I think that's where Roddenberry put his foot down.
Yeah, originally it was going to be him, wasn't it? Her rather, but then Roddenberry was not pleased about that because they were like, people like this character, and then you're going to ruin her, by her being a villain, as it were. But I mean, I thought Kim Cattrall was great. I thought she played it very well.
But she's brought in as the new character. So, I wonder who's going to be the traitor. Is it this one we've never seen before?
Oh, and with the time compression in this movie, it seems like they have the party. They're sent to rural Penthe. They get back. It's all within 2 days, right?
I had the impression it was about a week, but
maybe. I was just wondering how long Scotty's hangover was. If he's actually drunk through this entire movie, as he was in 5. Actually, I guess at this point in his life, Scotty's just always drunk.
Yeah. We don't know that he's not drinking more Romulan ale when he's not on camera.
Yeah. No bar fights. I guess he's a little out of shape for that in this one, but
At least he doesn't bang his head on anything. But yeah, she's perfectly good. She plays very convincing Vulcan. And she does a good job of she is the villain, but you understand. She's not just a snarling, I want to kill everybody villain.
she has no sideburns, though, and that annoys me. Just swoop and it's completely skinny skin by the ear, and it looks weird. Vulcans should have that sideburn, I feel like. And maybe she's just, she's one of those style hounds or something. Well, it's Kim Cattrall. Sure, she's a style hound. There we go. Sex in the City and all that.
I mean, maybe she had a terrible accident, Matt, and lost her sideburns.
They could. I remember actually reading in movie memories for Generations where Shatner's daughter was like, "Oh, you don't have the Kirk sideburns," so he actually had to add them on for Generations. He didn't grow them out.
Well, I think he had to add on his entire hairdo for Generations, so that makes sense.
Have you done Generations yet? Have you thought
No,
about
we've been pretty much working through them in order so far. We weren't planning to, but then we just ended up getting enough people on that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Generations is I don't know, I have very mixed feelings about that film, and in some ways I wish it didn't exist, but in other ways, I did. There's parts of it I did enjoy, but I still feel that they kind of should have left it for the original crew at this. This was the perfect send-off, I feel, with 6.
Well, they didn't all show up for Generations. That was, I guess, one of the problems. It's like, here's just a few to make it seem, legit enough. But don't hold your breath for, McCoy or Spock, right?
I have huge nostalgia for Generations, but I'm convinced that if I go back to it, it's not going to hold up. I just remember, as a kid, the idea of Shatner and Picard being on screen together was mind-blowing enough on its own.
There's a great scene at the beginning of that film where they're on the bridge of the new Enterprise with you've got Scotty and you've got Kirk, and you can tell in the way that they're talking to each other that they really dislike each other. Like just the delivery is you could tell that they're not keen on spending any more time with each other. Yeah.
Cherry Mountain, golden piping sunsets on your hills.
As far as like design elements in this movie go, there's not a whole. Aurora Penthe's new. That's cool. Is this the first time we see like the Klingon tribunal space? I feel like we're used to seeing that a few more times in the future.
I think they were reusing a TNG set for that.
And an actor.
No, this film was made to be as sort of as cheaply as possible. They did. I mean, as far as I know, most of the stuff was all recycled from Next Generation. And they reused all that stuff. And that's probably why the aesthetic is so similar, really. But that works.
See, I felt that with 3 that they were reusing a lot of stuff. This one, I guess I guess after 5 you would have your cost-cutting film. But to Nick Meyer's credit, this one never occurred to me as like being a cost saver.
Well, it's because it's not reusing things from like the last film you just watched. It's reusing things from all over the TV show, so it's a little more subtle about it.
I guess they spent their design budget on those giant clocks that are all over the bridge, which I find annoying, by the way.
I do, every time I see those, I wonder why they're there. Because it's a bit odd, isn't it? Because you just think in space, star dates, all that kind of thing, time probably doesn't work exactly the same in this way. It's a bit odd. But
no film except Interstellar, ever gets into that. The fact that time is different across space, they're just like, you have to ignore that in these films.
Well, they do have their whole warp thing, right?
But like they have conversations with each other in real time, even though time would be traveling at different rates in their different locations.
Yeah. Sorry, James. I think you had a point to make, and you had one of your cutouts.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of design, I'd say, you're right. It doesn't look like a cheap film at all. I mean, it's still, they nail that without it, looking like it's. I mean, it's not what I'm trying to say. It's not Superman 4. Like it really looks, like it's like work has been put into it.
I guess Aurora Penthe, the caves were just the quote hell set from TNG.
Mm-hmm.
I said it's like a colder Temple of Doom with fewer children, but and that was my quote. But then when I started thinking about it, I was like, oh, it's probably that set they use for the training and Chain of Command, for example. Although it's in like half of the TNG episodes, that was just the first one that came to mind.
But yeah, it's Nicholas Meyer's like talent that he can make a cheap film look good. Because he does the same thing with Khan as well. And I think it goes back to what we were saying about the very tight script. He only spends exactly as much as he needs to. So by only having like 2 or 3 space scenes in the whole film, they look great.
He did need the clocks, man. Okay.
Yeah, because he wrote Ruther Khan very quickly, didn't he? As far as I know, it was like 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. The script was kind of done, and I mean, obviously, loads of editing went on, but it was still very quick turnaround. And the same with this as well. And I mean, apparently, that there was so many other options they were going to go for with this film as well, like so many other sort of different directions. I mean, even Walter Koenig had an idea of what he wanted the film to be, and fortunately, it didn't come to fruition because. If you're bored, you can have a look. You can Google that. It's a terrible, terrible idea. But then there was also, there's the Starfleet Academy thing again as well. They were going to go back, to try and begin again, but with like younger Kirk, younger Spock, which obviously they did with Abrams, but they were going to do it earlier. And I don't know. You see, I've never liked that idea anyway. I've always felt like I wanted to see things moving forward. I don't like the sort of going back, to the sort of the beginning again. And but because apparently it was going to be, I think it was going to be what's his name, McCoy, like sort of talking to some cadets or whatever about the old days, and then it would have gone back to them, sort of one of their earlier adventures or whatever. But in the end, Shatner and Nimoy weren't keen on the idea, and then they came up with the Cold War, which obviously works a lot better.
I'm very glad that they did go ahead and make this film because, like you say, it's a perfect send-off for the old cast and the Cold War stuff, which I guess we'll probably get into in a minute. But I actually really like the first half of the 2009 film. I do like all the Academy stuff. But overall, I'm so bored of Star Trek giving us prequels now. Where's the next generation? Where's the real, future, new ideas, new sci-fi, new politics, new Star Trek?
Well, that had been on TV for 4 years at this point.
No, but it's not. Yeah. It's all prequels. It's all still old timelines. I want, what comes next. Picard gave us a hint of it, but we didn't really get to see it.
Oh, you're talking the big picture, gotcha.
Yeah.
See, and that's what I was most. That's one of the things. There's many things I was honestly disappointed with Picard, but one of them was that see the political side of things. The alien races, that kind of thing is one of the things I've always been most fascinated by, and that just doesn't feature really. Not in any sort of great depth. One of the other reasons why I liked Deep Space Nine so much is because it was all about the intergalactic politics that was going on.
I hate to throw out the read the novel line, but yeah, The Last Best Hope, the Picard novel, actually does have quite a bit of politics leading up to the show. You shouldn't have to read it to get the show, but yeah, they have things with politics with representatives from colony worlds and all this stuff. And if you do want the politics side, I would recommend reading that book, which gets into it a lot deeper than say this movie does. So that Cold War stuff then?
I think Picard had more of it than say the Kelvin films, or even a lot of Discovery did, but still it was no TNG.
Yeah, that's the thing with Picard as well is the first couple of episodes I really quite enjoyed. I thought it was a good start. I just felt it tailed off quite badly. Towards particularly towards the end, I thought that's a dreadful ending.
It was almost a great ending, and then they just didn't have the balls to go through with it.
Well, it ended with the TNG two-parter, didn't it? Time Zero, one of the ones that it's kind of nice to watch, but definitely wasn't one of the best of both worlds. But let's do a little bit of that Cold War talk. I'm always interested in the politics as well. I don't like to emotionally invest myself in them, but it's interesting. You don't have to emotionally invest yourself in Cold War politics anyway.
To break on through that eastern shell, back to the road on the 35th degree, and back across that edge green sea. Spell with electricity, by sinking leg amphetamine, control the facets of opposition, careful where you open your mind, according to the cut of
Yeah, okay, I guess we're resegmenting then on that whole thing, so I'll try it again. Cold War!
Yeah, well, James, I brought you on just because I listened to your other podcast and you've mentioned Star Trek a few times. I wanted to chat Trek with you. But as it happens, you've mentioned in the past that the reason you got into Chinese history was because you had an interest in the Soviet Union originally. So I've kind of brought in the perfect guest for this podcast, I think.
Maybe, I don't know. It's funny because I was always interested in. When I was growing up, it was obviously the Cold War was still going on and the war still existed. And I remember when I used to watch TV, with my family, especially on the news, they were always talking about the Soviet Union. They were always talking about what was going on there and how bad things constantly. And I always wanted to know why. What's the problem? Why is this another side which is maybe that we don't agree with or whatever, this kind of thing. And so that's how I kind of got into studying it. And then I obviously went to university and I studied history. That was my undergraduate degree. And I studied Soviet history, and which I found very interesting. And that's how I ended up getting into Chinese history, because they share a kind of a revolutionary sort of history with each other. But maybe that's one of the other reasons why I've always found the Star Trek films so interesting, because they were trying to mirror a lot of what was going on, particularly during the Cold War period. In the original series, you have those episodes where you've got like these proxy wars that are going on, and where they're basically aping what was going on in the real world. Where you had America arming other countries and Soviet Union doing the same, and sort of having standoffs with each other. And that's why with 6, you end this this point where they're taking something like the Chernobyl incident and turning this into this Klingon moon exploding, and then how do you deal with this when one side has been so? Chernobyl absolutely weakened the Soviet Union, but it's a bit of a stretch to say it was part of the downfall of the system. But it obviously did have a major impact. And then it's this idea of like, how do you deal with an adversary that you've had, and how do you think about how can you reintegrate them into the systems that you're running? And that's what I found most interesting about this film, was this idea of like, do you take that upon yourself to try and make a difference and try and change things, or do you use this as to your advantage to sort of further your own ambitions? And if we see what's happened with Russia and the Soviet Union, the West, I'd say, in general, made huge mistakes at the end of the Cold War in terms of how to handle the fall of the Soviet Union, how to handle the Russian Federation, and because perhaps they were not open enough in dealing with them. And that's why from this film it's quite interesting to see Spock having this idea of we can coexist, but we can also, if we work together, which is a different approach.
I was sitting here thinking, because I think when I first saw the movie, I was also like, well, Chernobyl didn't kill the Soviet Union, whereas here it's a space opera, so it's an exploding moon that, robs the Klingons of their power. But I was sitting here thinking, is that, they certainly lost a lot of face, even probably among the Soviet people after Chernobyl. So, the power wasn't a big deal, but the loss of reputation, the loss of faith, the loss of trust might have been sort of the straw to break the camel's back. We get something much more bigger than a straw, of course, in Star Trek 6, but sometimes you got to beat people over the head a little bit harder with the metaphor in film, I guess.
But one of the points that Spock makes in the film is very close to reality. For one point, where he says, the Klingons want to, sort of put an end to hostilities because they can no longer afford it, and that is one of. It's again. The thing with the fall of the Soviet Union is it is actually very complicated. It's not as simple as like the Americans managed to outspend them in weapons build up. It's not as simple as saying it's like events like Chernobyl. There's so many factors which are sort of that work together to create the end of the Union, but they that is still a major factor. Like the idea that so much money was being spent on military that they were never probably ever going to use, and which could have been used perhaps on other things.
Well, they literally have the line in here, right, that the Klingons, their economy can't handle it because of their ridiculous military budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can no longer afford it. And there, as I said, there is a connection there with what happened in the Soviet Union, but it's a connection. It's not it's not the sole reason.
Depressingly, I think that's how like most wars have ended since the World War II. Right? We can't afford it anymore.
Yeah, it's just a standoff. You can't. Not that anyone should ever have an effective war, but
right. But it shows how pointless the wars we're fighting are. If we can give up on them when they're no longer profitable.
Right, exactly. And another film that Luke and I are doing soon, we'll have a lot more to say about this. I don't know if you started Things to Come yet, but that gets way deep into that whole idea of not being able to, afford to have the conflict you're still having. The Federation, I wonder if, I guess the Klingons need to be in the weak place for this film, but yeah, a table-turning movie. I wonder how that would have rolled. Where the Federation is actually, that would take a lot away from the utopia aspect, I suppose, but it could be interesting.
Yeah, we saw glimpses of that with yesterday's Enterprise, didn't you? With in Next Generation, where you have where there has been a conflict, and the Klingons are very clearly winning, that, and it's kind of, Starfleet's done like nearly by that point. It's so I think they've kind of tried to explore that a little, but this was probably the only way really they could bring the Klingons down to to the level where they'd be able to deal with it this way. And it's quite a neat way of doing this in universe. I think it works very well.
One thing which I found a little, I guess, depressing or disappointing, this is the only time in the 6 TOS movies we see any Romulans, I think. And it's just like one ambassador.
And it's a shame because, I mean, honestly, the Romulans have always been my favourite of the sort of adversarial races.
Yes, me too. I love all the Romulan and Vulcan stuff.
Yeah, it's the ships are amazing. I love the sort of the motivation, the fact that you never really know, you never really know what they're up to, and I think that's always been very, very interesting. And this, I mean, the Romulan character that you had in this film had a bigger part, like in the director's cut. Like he's part of the conspiracy, but you actually get to see sort of parts of that in the director's cut that you don't see in the main film. But it's funny because whenever. For many over the years, like with all the Star Trek films, whenever they've been sort of talking about writing another one, they've often talked about putting the Romulans in there as being like one of the major sort of antagonists, and it never really happens apart from what we got with Star Trek Nemesis, which was it's maybe not what I would really have wanted to, but it's certainly a culture I think could have been explored in more detail, because it's a fascinating one.
Well, it looks like we're finally getting it now if we do continue with more seasons of Picard. Hopefully they'll get deeper and deeper into Romulan stuff.
Yeah. You said you're a DS9 guy. In some ways I kind of feel like the Cardassians are kind of like the refined Romulan thing, where they clearly do have their very own culture, which is very alien to yours, but with lots of details. And Deep Space Nine, I guess they didn't want to go with the Romulans either, so they sort of had their fun with the Cardassians there, which for me, maybe they're second to the Romulans or on an even keel for me, because Klingons in the end are kind of just like, often just ram heads together and whatever honor is going to mean this week. But
I enjoy Klingons because I love a good warrior race and all the shouting and bravado and chomping into big legs of meat, but the Romulans with the Vulcan aspect are more interesting. And I probably will end up liking Cardassians. It's just that I haven't watched much DS9 yet. I'm almost at the end of my TNG rewatch, then I'm going to go back to DS9 because I haven't really seen it since I was a kid.
Yeah, DS9 is really something else. It's I'd say if you start watching that, the first maybe 2 seasons, as everyone says, I wouldn't say they're rough. They're definitely not sort of rough, but they don't really sort of illustrate the sort of the greatness that is to come. But once it gets to sort of season 3 and onwards, it becomes
Don't worry, I struggled through all of the original series and the first few seasons of TNG, so I can handle bad Trek.
Alamarine.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was quoting what's considered. Yeah, I was quoting one of the. And you are one of the. What's considered one of the worst DS9. I love that episode. To be honest, it's one of those hated ones I love. But
it stuck with people though, didn't it? I mean, everyone remembers it because it was. I mean, probably for not the right reasons, but it was certainly a very memorable episode.
No, Avery Brooks really investing himself into those nursery rhymes. I love that.
Yeah, I have an ex-girlfriend who was absolutely obsessed with Julian Bashir. So, yeah. I've got that to look forward to, I guess.
I'll tell you something funny about that is the what's it called? The Paramount really didn't like him at all, and every season they tried to sack him. They tried to get rid of him all the time.
Really?
And he was not liked at all. Not because he the actor or anything at all, but they just didn't see the point of his character. Like in the thing at all, so they kept trying to get rid of him, and then but then they were insistent. Obviously, the showrunners were insistent that he had to stay there, and then you'll see. I don't want to say anything because it will ruin stuff, but yeah.
Okay.
Well, it took about 3 years for him to have a point, didn't it? Because he's especially annoying in the first season of that one.
I mean, you get that with quite a few. With most of the series, there's characters there that I'm still not sure. I mean, there's characters from Enterprise that I still don't know why they were in that show. Like, what? Yeah, why they existed. It's which is a shame.
Yeah, I guess I've got Enterprise and Voyager to go after that. So.
I said I had one more basically minor point. Yeah, the soundtrack is very good, but back into my Matt's musical corner, the opening theme is basically Mars from Host Planets, which is annoying for me. I don't know. It's because most of the Star Trek movies at least have like a relatively distinctive theme, and this one is just like, oh, it's a at the time 70 or 80-year-old tune, which whatever. So
this movie's music was very functional, but I couldn't remember any of it. If you asked me to hum the music from Star Trek 6 right now, I couldn't.
I'd hum Mars, but yeah.
But there are bits and bobs from all the previous ones which I could.
This is not the only movie to do that too. There's like 20 different films that just use that theme in like slightly rewritten form.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, the main theme, I like it a lot. Because I think, as I said, it's just got an emotional resonance for me, from seeing, particularly then, especially when you see them sort of take off and they're just sort of, this is it, we're done. And they look old, and it looks like this is the right time.
I do remember pooping myself just a little bit when I first saw the movie, and the Praxis explosion rocks out of nowhere.
Well, every sci-fi explosion since that has ripped off the Shockwave.
Yeah, really. Even Generations, the Nexus has the same sort of cloudy look.
Well, even when George Lucas went back and edited Star Wars, he put those into the Death Star explosions.
I guess they do look cool.
I've seen some things with, like, a physicist being like, yeah, but they don't make any sense. They look very cool. And, like, could the Excelsior not just fly up a little bit?
Yeah, space is three-dimensional. Yeah, two-dimensional thinking.
Yep.
It's like the infamous Prometheus scene where she's, running from the ship by not running away from the ship.
Right.
Let's go left or right.
Just go just go left or right, you're fine.
Just don't go, you're choosing the one direction you don't want to choose, okay? You deserve to die. Everyone in that movie deserved to die.
Yeah. I know, sometimes I think I need to go back and watch that again. I've only seen it once, and I don't remember it being really, really awful.
We'll do that one at some point. The thing with that movie is there's things about that movie I really, really, absolutely love. There's things I absolutely hate, and there's like nothing in between. Everything in that movie, I either love it or hate it. It's all stuck together.
That movie is just a compelling argument for why Ridley Scott shouldn't have been allowed to touch Alien after the first one. He should be put in George Lucas quarantine.
No, not Nick Meyer heaven, where he should be allowed to do as many Star Treks as he wants. Oh, one thought I had, I remember maybe it's just the first couple episodes of Discovery where he's listed as a associating producer, where I guess they just called him up and asked him a few questions. But I think he pretty quickly dropped out of that one.
Yeah, I mean, Discovery is in a weird situation because if you watch the opening of any of those episodes, there's like about 50,000 like producers on that show. It's just like tons of them. It's like producer after producer. There's about 15 or 20 of them.
So many people have got their fingers in the Star Trek pie that it's just a finger pie now.
Sorry, I was an American just thinking about that. All I could come up with is the Beatles song.
Is there a Beatles song, Finger Pie?
For a fish and finger pie in Penny Lane.
Okay. I thought you were going to tell me that finger pie was some euphemism you use in America. But dude, last night I gave her the finger pie.
Well, Lennon and McCartney did say they put in, or McCartney said he put in Penny Lane basically also as a euphemism, so.
Okay.
Because they like doing that. The politics of this movie, I guess, don't hold up anymore because these folks actually sit down and discuss things.
Well, they don't, in a way they don't, but it's not like the Soviet Union was the only enemy the West will ever have, or like that this situation will come up with. I think, of course, it was a metaphor for the Cold War, but just as a pure storytelling concept, I think it's pretty timeless.
That's how it kind of felt in the 90s, though. It was like, hey, there aren't any enemies anymore, and then
yeah. That's where you get, like, it's the Francis Fukuyama, the end of history kind of idea, which is also one of the reasons why we're in a kind of a mess that we're in now is because because of that kind of concept that the West had won in inverted commas and that everything was moving in this direction when obviously it doesn't work that way.
I mean, Kirk even says in this film that it can't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he's an old frump, and what does he know? But yeah, it was like, the 90s, like after the Cold War, it's like everything's groovy now, like the Fukuyama, and I just said Portlandia is a dream of the 90s. Of course, now Portland's burning in multiple ways, but so I guess that dream didn't last.
Well, it's because that dream only existed for a certain subset of the population.
True. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people where the 90s were probably not so fantastic, so especially if you happen to be living in, a not first world country. But, being ironic, of course, the politics of this movie are still interesting and apply, but it just seems a little more gentlemanly than what we've been seeing in the past few years.
Well, I mean, Trump went and had a cheeseburger with Kim Jong-un. It's not like this concept is completely dead.
Yeah, okay, good point. I wonder if it's maybe, it's as much the perception we're getting of it. Now the perception, we're just being given all this, like, people were screaming at each other, which they were screaming at each other 30 years ago, but people weren't, like, recording it all, so.
Yeah. But, I mean...
that might be a big difference.
Who knows, maybe the next time they make a Star Trek film, it'll be... Spock will say, well, there's an old Vulcan proverb, only Trump could go to Korea.
Well, they didn't get much out of it. But, apart from some good press at the time.
Yep.
And then now, not so much.
A couple fantastic photos, yes. Definitely a photo op.
Yeah, extremely meme-worthy photos.
Any final thoughts on Star Trek 6, then?
I think I'll go first, because I didn't see this when it came out. I was born in 1990. So all of this is quite academic to me. But... I see this film very much as a handover from the old cast to the new cast. This is the end of TOS, the start of TNG. And in that way, it has a very strange, like... The way that Kirk's character is, like, he's out of touch, he's stuck in the past. And the way that the whole film is about, like, we need to let go of these ideas. Although it is a little sad, at the same time, it was kind of felt hopeful and optimistic to me. Like... yeah, the mistakes have been made, but a bright future is ahead of us. And because I'm so much more of a TNG fan than I am a TOS fan, the ending, although I do feel a bit of sadness, I also am like, at the end of that film, I'm so excited for Picard and Co.'s adventures.
You're ready to go Farpoint.
Yeah.
And I think that is pretty much how this film was viewed at the time. I mean, that was part of the promotion, that this is going to be the bridge between old Trek and new Trek for you. And then they're like, maybe we can squeeze a little more juice out of that lemon, and went for Generations as well.
I feel like this does that job better than Generations does.
Well, it does. It does. And I don't hate Generations either. I'm like one of those Star Treks like pizza people, even the terrible Trek is kind of like fun.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever sat down and watched Trek and not had some semblance of a good time.
I accidentally had a pizza with anchovies a few weeks ago, though, and I didn't like that one.
Oh, me and fish, so...
yeah. After I got it, I realized the katakana actually did say anchovy, and I just didn't notice. I was like, crap.
Anchovies isn't even close to the weirdest shit they put on pizzas here, though.
Yeah, with the corn, mayonnaise, and mentaiko, yeah.
Do they do the whole thing? Because over in China, they used to do all the stuff like putting... like things like peaches and stuff on pizza as well, and you get just like the ridiculous amount of mayonnaise on everything. Was it's the other thing, yeah.
Do they do peaches and mayonnaise on the same pizza?
Oh yes.
Oh god, okay. That I was assuming we were going to say no to that. Okay.
The other problem is they treat pizza like it's a luxury food here, so it's really expensive.
Yeah, my anchovy pizza was a little more than I wanted to pay, and it was the cheapest one on the menu, too. That's the problem, is that I went with the cheapest one on the menu. Oops.
Right. So yeah, I only go for pizza if, there's a few of us and we're getting about, some sort of voucher or deal. But if I'm just, on my own, it's I fancy a Domino's tonight. I'm going to spend, $30.
But anyway, back to the original metaphor. Star Trek for me is pizza, and it's pretty rare one's just gonna like not at least slightly entertain me on some level. This one, Star Trek 6, being very entertaining on many levels. So
yeah, I mean, I for me, as I said, this is still one of my favourite Star Trek films. Probably one of my favourite films that I've seen. I mean, I think one of the reasons definitely that I feel sad about it is because I did have that sort of connection with the original crew growing up, not from the original series, but really more from the films. And I think over those films, you really do see, particularly you see Kirk grow as a character, actually, like quite a lot through all 6 of these films. And even as an actor as well, I feel that Shatner gets better as the films go on. And that's why I felt sad to be saying goodbye at the end of this, because I just thought, this is the right time to end. It does need to be finished, but also, this has been a very, very good journey. It's
See, I guess I got out of your little predicament because maybe a year or two before this came out, they had the 24-hour, TOS marathon. So I had just gotten like 4 VHS tapes of just like 30 episodes. So there were still some I hadn't like seen so much. So that helped. But I saw the show a lot more when I was a kid, too. I saw the movies a lot as well, but we definitely had the show running in the house quite a bit. But I guess we're wrapping that up. So, James, can you tell our listeners a bit about where they can find the things that you do?
Now this is always a bit of a problem, because I struggle with this on my own show. Okay. So anyway, so I'm from the Computer Game Show, a podcast that I do with David Turner, Matt Murray, and Sean Bell, and we release an episode every week, usually on a Wednesday. We also do streaming as well. I mean, I stream on Fridays. In fact, I'm streaming Bridge Crew at the moment that I'm playing with Sean, which has been very fun. It's been very, very good. And I mean, we are at TCGS Co, I think it is. That's what Matt would probably tell me to say. And on Twitter, on anything, you can find us as the Computer Game Show on iTunes and or any other podcast service. But give us a listen. We enjoy doing the show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching your Bridge Crew. I've actually got it queued up in my YouTube. Every now and then I think, I'm going to watch one of your streams live. And then I remember that involves waking up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, that is a problem. That was a pain when I was living in China, and I used to because I used to play Xbox Live still with David, actually, mostly, and Matt sometimes, and it was like meant getting up at like 4 or 5 in the morning or whatever to play with them, and it was horrible. And also the internet was garbage as well. Lag was terrible. The only game we ever could play was Left 4 Dead, because it had its own servers, and so anything that was peer to peer was useless because the lag was just too heavy. But it's good times.
Yeah, I still play a bit of Monster Hunter and stuff with folks back home, but for my first 2 years in this apartment, I didn't have internet. I was just using mobile data, including when I did these podcasts.
Yeah, that's why we only had 2 guests a month at that point. And also, those were the only people that would talk to us. He got the letters he got his letters out so well. I'm just going to throw them straight to you today, Luke.
Okay, if you want to find our podcast, we're on Twitter at MLSFSpod, or you can just find us on Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, search Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary. We'd love it if you get in touch. People don't, but, who uses iTunes anymore?
It's not a thing. It's Apple Podcasts now. We don't call it iTunes anymore. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts. That's Apple Podcasts, folks. That's where you rate and review. Okay. We have to change our nomenclature, I guess.
No, I'm Team Fortnite. Fuck Apple.
Luke loves Pokemon at Luke loves PKMN at something. Man, I got those letters out. Why can't I get
why is mine easier than the podcast you're actually on? Yeah, if you like Pokemans, you can listen to my other podcast, Luke Loves Pokemon. And if you like the music you heard during this podcast, you can find Matt's music at rovingsagemedia.bandcamp.com.
I promise to you I've never ripped off Mars from the planets. I've ripped off plenty of other stuff probably, though, so... Probably more like rock and roll. Okay. Anyway, thank you, James, for having a chat with us. We did get up that early in the morning for this one, so...
Thanks for having me on. It's been good. I've enjoyed the chat.
Yeah, it was fun. But now, James, you and the listeners at home can go forth into the undiscovered country.
Next week, Back to the Future 2.
The mandate tides through the dynasty song. John King's got cream that takes the cake. Mesmerizing with the spinning dice between the gorges left dry by lakes. Landforms set under a celestial net, spaced so wide above that inner sea. We the people embody whole oceans, placed in drops of immortality bet. Distinguished hubbub of the mountain night rain revels in its newfound source to the sea. Those apostles, man, how they jostle on the landing back to infinity. Substance of the ceremony, stone fruit of an ice age. Okuno in sanctuary is where we celebrate all life.